everyone, this is Lori from My File Addiction. In this tip video, we are going to be talking about actually stoning fonts from scratch. And I'm going to show you a few different styles and how I would go about stoning them. Okay, each font that we use for each word that we're going to stone is going to be a unique process, and we have to kind of learn that because it all depends upon whether you're using uppercase, upper and lowercase, all lowercase, whether you're trying to put together a word that has only 5 letters in it versus something that has 10 letters in it, what the actual letters are. There's just a lot that goes into it, and most people don't think about it because what they're doing is typically they have learned the process of creating t-shirt designs for vinyl or for print, and basically they type out this wording here, and you can shrink and condense that wording to any size that you want. Okay, as long as it visually looks nice, you virtually can do anything you want. Well, the process with creating wording and changing it over into a rhinestone design is a little bit different. Okay, there are limitations to what we can do. There's limitations to how thick you can make letters. There's limitations to how small you can make letters. Especially if you want to use an SS10 stone size. Sometimes the only way to make it work is to go down to an SS6. And so I'm going to try to kind of help you understand. Like I said, I could do this video over and over and over again and pick a bunch of different fonts, different wording and everything, and the process may be unique for every time I do a new word. Okay, but hopefully these tip videos are going to help you stop and think when you are in the process of converting anything over to a rhinestone design. Don't necessarily always think you did something wrong. Okay, there's a lot of times that the only way for me to get wording to look right is to manually place all the stones myself. Okay, I do that, and I do it often, just because what the program gives me is just sometimes a complete mess. And that's okay. That is all a part of the process. Nothing is going to come out perfect. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of explain why. And when I make any of my rhinestone designs, including lettering, I break it down letter by letter. So the first thing that I think the process that everything goes wrong is everybody wants to stone the entire word at one time. Okay, I don't look at it that way. I look at it as the B is one letter, the E is another letter, then the A, then the U, then the T, and then the Y. I don't look at it all as one word. Okay, because sometimes you can break lettering down and you can use pieces of certain letters to move it over and create other letters without having to start from scratch and manually clean up designs over and over and over again. Okay, so that's why I like to break down any design that I make, break it down into pieces. Okay, so I visually look at lines and I say, okay, this section I can move over here and I can use it as another part of the design. Okay, so we're going to start with this particular one up here. First thing I'm going to do is I am going to just copy and paste, and I'm going to do what everybody else would normally do and how they would stone it. And I'm going to show you what we have to start with, okay? So this particular word, it's a script font, so most people are going to want to, you're going to want to weld these letters, okay? So the letters are all connected, okay? And like I said, most people will do that. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you are starting with a design that is close to the size that you want the finished design to be. Okay, there's nothing worse than starting with a huge word and you think, oh, it's stoned great, and then all of a sudden you've reduced it down to the size that you really need it to be because you are still in the rhinestone mode, and then it just starts looking awful. Okay, so typically I always try to size my wording to the size I want it to be. Now we always have to realize that just because we sized it to that, it's not mean that our finished design is going to be exactly that size, because I find that some letters I have to go outside the perimeters of what the actual lettering was in order to form the letters, okay? And again, that's something natural, and that's not something the program is going to know to do. We visually have to make it happen. Also, you want to make sure you have sufficient amount of spacing between your letters. So if things are a little too tight here, that means your stones are just going to collide, okay? Because this T and this Y are just way too close. The stones are going to lay on the outside lines of this design. So these two, you have to have them spaced far enough apart in order for the stones to lay on the lines and have a space between them. Okay, so to me, this Y is going to have to be brought way over here. So even though we have, sized this to a little over 8 inches wide, we are going to have to respace and account for respacing these letters in order to, make this word identifiable once we stone it. So you do have a respacing feature, a character spacing feature in your text panel here. But what this is going to do, it's going to respace everything at the same time. So all of these letters, like between the U and the T and the Y, the spacing is not the same. But, visually the spacing is about the same between these letters. So even if we were to start to increase the spacing, you're getting a lot of spacing between these, but this is still tight, okay? So you may want to do this to a certain point, but what you're going to end up having to do is either you take the chance of stoning it as is, and it's going to turn out kind of very cramped looking here, and it could possibly the stones could collide, so it will cause a gap or a skip, or what you will have to do is you will have to ungroup these letters and manually put the space between more spacing between the U and the T and the Y. Okay, so just for this purpose, I'm just going to kind of leave it as just like this. Okay, and what we can do is we can also drop, I like to drop a stone. I right click on it, convert to path, and then I take that stone and I make it 0.13 inches. That's the size for an SS10 stone. Okay, this is going to kind of give me an idea, for one thing, how many stones I would be able to physically fit for the thickness of the letters, and it would tell me about how much spacing I would need for these letters to be apart too. So if you zoom in here, this stone is going to lay here, and that stone is going to lay there. So you know that these are way too close together. Okay, same thing with this and this. You got a little bit of a spacing here, probably would be kind of okay. And if we go over to the U, now I see some potential problems here with the U, because in order for this to be identifiable, that there is a space, it has to be a lot larger space than our normal spacing between each stone. And this is pretty much what we would normally have between stones. So there's going to be issues here. If we go up to some of our other lettering, and let me zoom out here, and say we have a style that, I'm going to bring this up here. Okay, we go up to this lettering, okay? Now, whenever you have upper and lowercase lettering, don't try to see how many stones thick you would be able to get using an uppercase. An uppercase letter, because it's so much larger to work with, is going to potentially allow more rows of stones to be placed inside or around it than the lowercase letters. Okay, the lowercase letters are smaller, and some of the lettering, such as the letter E or the letter A, or sometimes even a script S, they're more condensed. Okay, so if you try to put too many stones in a row for the thickness of the lettering, you are going to visually take away from being able to identify that that's that particular letter. Okay, so sometimes, you know, I get it all the time. Everybody wants nice, bold, thick lettering, but sometimes certain letters just do not allow for that to happen. Okay, and visually be identifiable. Okay, so what I like to physically do is pick a letter that is, to me, looks the most condensed. So to me, it would be the E and the A in this particular design. And I would go in here and say, okay, can I physically do 2 rows evenly around and create this E? Okay, so what you have to do is you just kind of manually have to kind of do it and see what you can get. Okay, I can tell you right now, the program is not going to lay it that way, because the program is going to lay it on these lines here. Okay, the 2 outside lines, that's what it uses as a guide. Okay, and then if there's available space in the center, then it will try to place a stone. Okay, so it's always going to basically work from the outside in. So if we try to place a stone on this line, and we line it up with the center of our circle, okay, so the center of the circle should be laying on the line. So if I take this and I duplicate this circle and I try to put the center of that circle on this line, you can see there's absolutely no room. Okay, so the program is not going to do that. The program is not going to make this equally 2 rows of stones. Now we could try to manually do it, but let's see what it actually can happen. Okay, so if we take this letter E and we do, this is what we would have to do in order to have enough spacing for 2 rows. Okay, so we're just going to do just a quick process and just kind of lay the stones here and kind of see what we get. And if we just follow the outline of this E, it doesn't have to be perfect. So now we take this, we would have no problem, doing 2 rows if you wanted to here. Okay, so we do something like that. The problem is going to be on the inside here, because now we have to actually fill this in and leave a space so it's identifiable, okay, that it's an E. So now we're going to try to fill this in, and we're going to go in like this. So now all of a sudden you can see, if I were to back out of this and I pick this E and do something like that, now that's all filled in. So to me, this letter style is not going to work for a double row. Okay, it's going to, by the time you start doing that, and you start doing that for all the letters, it's going to look like a jumbled mess. Okay, you're going to be wasting your time, and you're going to pull that lettering out, and you're going to say it doesn't even look like the word beauty. Okay, so then you have to kind of decide. Okay, you might be able to do part of it, and I do this a lot. You might be able to do part of it as 2 rows, but then certain areas you might have to just do 1 row. Okay, so now, as you can tell, just by deleting what would have created that double row, now you can tell it's an E. Okay, so visually now I could say that this particular design, I probably would do what I consider I call it a hybrid. I don't know why I call it that, but it's because I use different rows of stones for different parts of the design. But this particular design, I just, I know I would have to do something like that if I wanted to do something, and not just do 1 row of stones. Okay, but if I can guarantee, if we just went through the stoning process, and you'll visually see what you have to start with, you probably would have no idea. Really, you would be so confused on what should I do. Okay, but by starting this and kind of doing it this way, now this gives you a guide to how you're going to do and approach your cleanup. Okay, because we know that we're going to have to do a single row and a double row of stones. Okay, so now this particular design up here, the E is even smaller yet, so there's absolutely no way that you would be able to do this as a double row of stones. It just, these letters, these certain parts of these letters are just way too small of an area. Okay, the B, absolutely, B, you would probably not have any problem, but again, we can't look at the B. We have to look at all the lowercase letters and try and see. I can guarantee the A and the E, absolutely not. The U, again, because you have a line on this side and a line on this side, by the time you put, two rows or 2 stones over here and 2 stones over here, you have probably a tiny little gap in between them, and it's just not going to look as nice. Okay, so that is kind of giving us an idea. And you could also, if you wanted to go down to this is an impact letter. Okay, so now with this particular one, I know if we ended up doing, if we did a stone here, a stone here, a stone here, and then it's going to lay a stone here. So now these stones are pretty far apart, and then it's going to lay a stone here, and stone here, and stone here. So now I bet you any money it's going to, this U is not going to even look probably like a U. Okay, so we are manually going to have to figure out um, what we have to do. Now again, we have the letter E here also that's going to have just a tight space here. So if we try and put, these stones in that same sequence, we're going to have the same issue here. The problem is here is because of this tight, we have to leave this spacing. So we may end up having to decide whether we can actually use 4 rows of stones there's room for, or possibly bringing this design down to 3 rows of stones. Just because I'm very concerned about these letters and the lack of space in between here. You can widen your letters, but if you are at your maximum capacity, which, actually we have to add more on for the account for shifting these letters over. So right now, we're at almost 8.5 inches. If we have to expand every single one of these letters, you could easily you could expand that, between 10 to 11 inches in order to be able to fit 4 rows of stones, and have sufficient spacing in order to create these letters. So that's something, when we get down to that, we need to kind of make a decision. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I am just going to stone these just so you can kind of see what anybody else probably would encounter if they just, pick the rhinestone function and, started from there. Okay, so if we go to this one and we've changed our spacing to 0.025. Okay, like I said, this program, or the program, is going to try to lay the stones on the outside lines. Okay, it doesn't recognize this inside space because there's actually not room for a stone to be laid. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to follow these outer black lines. These are vector lines. Okay, so you're going to see it's going to create, we can try that one, and that's kind of, if we wanted a single line. But see, the reason it's jagged here is because it went from placing the stones on the outside of that vector line, and then it went to the inside. Outside, inside, outside, inside. So that's how you ended up with this kind of a jagged look. So if we went to this, okay, you would get something like that. Maybe a little bit better. Not perfect by no means. But I guess you could probably try to work with that one. And then you get kind of the same look with the radial fill. So these are pretty much, see, there's no change between these. So there's only change between these. But what you can do also, okay, well, let's leave it, let's leave it on maybe that one, okay? Okay, so next one, if you zoom out, you would never identify that as kind of the word beauty, okay? So the next one, this is the one we would potentially want to have a single row of stones and 2 rows of stones, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this and we're going to stone that. That's just an outline. Oh, you know what? I think this one I forgot to weld. So we're going to go back. And that one I may have forgotten to weld too. But your weld is under Object, Modify, Weld. Okay, so I don't think I did that with this one. Let's see if it made a difference. I don't think it will. Object, modified, weld. And let's see if it makes a difference. Nope, kind of get the same look. Okay, so no, didn't make a difference. Okay, so this one we welded, so this one I'm gonna, since the letters are now, anything that wasn't connected, we can create a separation. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to try the outline on that one. Okay, okay, you know, obviously still a lot of cleanup that needs to be done. Most would try to pick this one, but not a fan of that one at all. Or this one. So these two are basically about the same. So what I would do is I probably would leave, that one fills in a little bit more, and I'm not so much worried about the fill, so I would probably take this particular one. This one, just because it's, again, I've talked about this in my other videos, some of my other videos, my tip number 3 video, about anything that has, these letters have a natural curve to them. You lose that curve, especially on the top parts of letters. It will mimic a little bit of a curve on the side because it's laying in a grid, a straight line of a row of stones. But to me, it just doesn't make for a nice looking design when you have a design that has natural curves. You want to follow those curves, okay? In order to follow those curves, you want to pick the, let's see, where it follows the outline of the lettering. So that would be your edge fill, or if there happened to be enough room to actually lay stones on the inside, you would do your linear fill, okay? But like I said, I'm going to stick with the edge one here. Okay, so this particular lettering is probably the only type of lettering that I would say you can use your linear fill for. Okay, I think I called this a linear. This is a radial fill. I'm sorry, I think I misspoke. This is a radial fill. Linear fill is, like I said, the straight lines that go. This particular S has a flat top, a flat bottom, okay, flat sides. So it's okay to pick a linear fill to fill these particular college or athletic style lettering. And this is probably the only time I would ever use this type of the linear fill on lettering. But I'm going to show you actually another way that I prefer to actually do my lettering. And you can kind of see two different ways to do it. But if this one, say we put our spacing and we add some spacing here. Take this and you do something like that. So if you did this particular one, it definitely would not fill as nice. This one is not too bad. However, I still see cleanup that needs to be done. Okay, my eyes are drawn to these stones right in here. All of these ones right here, this needs to be, there's needs to be a gap here. So all of this entire row here too. So I still would put in extra time to clean up this design. I would not say it's completely done, okay? Um, so the last one is this particular, it's an impact font. And a lot of people want to use this because they want bolder lettering. But again, the bolder, the thicker the lettering, the less letters that you can put together. So college lettering, especially college lettering, because of the letters stick out, you definitely cannot fit as many letters across your chest. This particular one would be almost 8 inches. So maybe, depending on the letter, you might be able to fit one more letter in, okay? But that would be it. You couldn't fit a W in there because the W is the widest letter, and it's almost like putting 2 letter V's in there. So you would not be able to fit a W if you had, say, if the school name was WFHS. Okay, it would definitely put this design probably closer to 11 inches. And for an average sized person, that probably would be too wide of a design for a woman, okay? In order to make it smaller, you would definitely have to remove rows of stones. Then it's possible that you might be able to fit that letter in there. But again, okay, so we go down to impact. So impact, like I said, is another one that's a bolder type lettering, but we necessarily can't always get it to be as bold as we want it to be, because it depends upon the letters, the amount of space we have, and so on and so forth, okay? So if we were to do this one, and most people would want to pick this, and as you can see, you can't even tell what those letters are. I could, to me this was like, is this an E or an O? Okay, is this a B or a D? It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So you've got, this particular one, it makes the letters a little bit more identifiable. But again, it's still going to require a lot of cleanup on our part. If we went back to this one, and let's do this. So right now, like I said, this is just shy of 8.5 inches. So if we took this and we decided to make this wider, so it would start creating that space. Okay, so again, I would not use this particular, this is the linear fill, because it's cutting off parts of the A and the U. It's giving it that flat line. But now, see, you've gone to, a design that's now 11.837 inches wide, in order to try to, get that spacing in there, okay? So, as you can see, it's just not, now there is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It took 6 stones thick in order to create the spacing naturally, having the program do it. If we want to do it manually ourselves, then we will have to do that, okay? So we can start with this, and we'll see how wide we will go by keeping it, try to keep it 4 rows of stones, but manually having to create that spacing ourselves. Okay. So let's go back up to this first one. As I mentioned in previous videos, always make copies of the lettering that you're going to be stoning. okay? Because your lettering that you stone goes away, okay? So now we know that we've used this lettering to create this design. So now what we can do is we can now use this lettering as a guide, okay? And put it behind our lettering and try to clean up our designs. This particular one, I just don't like the way it looks. So I'm going to show you how you can do a single line letter a couple different ways. So if you have a skinny font like this, that is pretty much the same thickness, okay? It's not going to be perfect, but if visually this all looks like the same thickness to me, okay? I am not going to weld this because I want to do one letter at a time, okay? So that's how I would stone my lettering. I would do one lettering at a time. So I would do this, I would do Control, Shift, and G to ungroup this letter. Okay, now each letter is its own letter, okay? Okay, so you can do one of two things. We can take this E and we can bring our offset panel up, okay? We're gonna do an internal offset. Okay, and what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to decrease your distance. Oh, we might have to change. I think it's a black line, so you're going to have to want to change your letter to another color. Okay, so we're going to do our internal offset, and we're going to start clicking on this just until we see this line. The internal offset goes all the way through the letter, okay, without any breaks. You don't want to break, okay? So then what we're going to do here is we are going to click on that internal offset. Oh, see, and there's actually a break somewhere, so there must be a break in here. Okay, because it didn't pick this up. So we're going to start all over. One piece. See, and actually it broke it into 3 pieces. So we're going to do our internal offset, and we're going to just click. Okay, so right there. So I could somewhere between 0.03 and 0.025. So I could actually try to do 0.027. Okay, I want to get that line as thin as possible without any breaks in it. Okay, so that's my goal. I'm going to try 8. Okay, so I think that's about it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this, it's all one piece, I'm going to take it out of the letter, and now what I'm going to do is I am going to do an SS10, and I'm just going to do a single line. So as you can tell, it did a lot better with this letter because we kind of created a single line on the inside of the letter, and that's basically what we wanted. We wanted to for the stones to be able to follow the inside of the letter instead of following these 2 outside lines. Okay, so the program laid the stones on these lines, and this is why you ended up getting for some of the letters where it altered, because when I don't know why it does it, and it's not only this program, my program that I use also will do that too. All of a sudden I'm getting a nice straight line, and then all of a sudden it skips and wants to go to the other side of the line. Okay, I wish it would just pick a side, but that's not what it's capable of doing. Okay, so as you can kind of tell here, it's still it still did that, I believe. Shoot, sorry. Because these are misaligned, okay? But it's just, that's kind of an easy fix. So we can definitely work with this design. Another thing you can do, and I'm going to do it with the letter A here. So what I would basically do is I would go through and do each letter with that particular. Now, if you keep your offset option open, you could click on each letter, and if you clicked internal offset, it would have that same. Let me change this. It would use that same offset. But now you can see here this line is actually a little bit thinner. There's a break, so we might have to oops. Try to probably easier for me to just move this. And let's see, internal offset. There's a break, so we're going to have to try to back this out. Okay, so that if I change that to a 7, these are connected. Looks like it's all one. So by making just that little bit of a change, I think we got it to be all one line. Okay? And I guess we would know if we, oops, no, see, it's not. Okay? So delete that. Delete that. Go back here. And internal offset, and we could change that to a 6. And we might, and we got it all one piece as a 6. Okay. Oh, another thing you can do as another option, it's a little bit more time consuming, but you have kind of full control. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but you can actually go into your line options here, and we can draw our own shape. Okay. And what we're going to do is zoom in here so we have more control. I'm going to back off here just 1 second. Go back out of this. And for this one, there's my stone I dropped. Okay, I can't find it. I am going to drop another stone here. Convert to path. Change it to 0.13. So to know where our stones are, see this particular line, it's very close to this line. So I know this is not gonna, we don't want to start here, okay? So we're probably gonna have to change the shape of this A a little bit. So if we want a stone to be here in the center, and we want, say, something like this, I'm probably going to have to do something along this lines. I would take my pencil, oops, no, sorry, draw this shape. I want a curve. So I'm going to start here, and all I'm going to do is kind of small little clicks And I'm going to redraw the inside of this A. When you're drawing on a curve, it's better to do kind of little clicks, because then you can kind of easily draw your curve. If you notice, sometimes when these are nodes you're laying, if you double click on a shape and around curves, you'll see that there are more nodes. This is a straight line, so I'm going to go here. But there's more nodes on a curve than there are on straight lines. And then I'm going to end about here. I don't want to end here, because wherever I end is where there's going to be a stone laid. So I try to envision where the center of a stone would be, and that would be like right there. So then I hit escape, and that gets me out of that. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I should have followed. I don't think I can. I should have followed through and clicked through here. Okay. As long as you're not backtracking, I could have continued on and done my curve and went around here, but I forgot to do that. So I'm just going to kind of show you how part of this would turn out. So if I take this and I lay an SS10 stone on it, I get something along that lines. Okay, so even if I would have drawn a line here, I can't necessarily it would have thrown it off anyways. See, now we've got to decide here. There's going to be a little issue, because I can't continually do around here because these stones are too close together. What I might do is overlap them a little bit. In one of my other videos, I said it's okay to overlap the stones, because these circles are actually larger than the actual rhinestones that will be falling into them. So there's still enough room, by just having a slight overlap, that these holes would still put two stones in them. Okay. And then what we could manually do is just do something along this lines. So, and again, if you did not want to, if you didn't want to do that and draw your own line, then manually placing your stones is okay too. Okay. So, I probably, because this is a very simple letter, I probably would go that route instead of going all, for the B, probably not, but for these little lowercase letters that are barely going to take any stones, I probably would go through and just manually place all of those stones, because by the time I I do this, and then let's see, I'm going to put the color in that. By the time I sit here and now I got to go through and fix these, I probably could have just boom, 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 and within, 15, 20 seconds, I probably could have manually created that letter E without any problem at all. So you just got to kind of, pick and choose. Like I said, an uppercase letter, yes, that's going to be, a lot more stones to lay, but sometimes a lowercase letter, I manually will lay them, just because, if I got to sit there and fix them and clean them up anyways, I might as well place them exactly where I want them to be anyways. And that's okay. That's okay that you do that. Okay, so let's take this. I'm going to release my stones on that, so I can come in here. This E still has to be, what I would do is I probably would do something along this lines to open up that E. And again, I'm going outside the perimeter of the letter. Okay, the program does not know to do this. We visually have to do it to make that E look like an E. And I will this lines. These are going to be deleted. So when you do stone each letter individually, sometimes obviously where this is going to overlap the Y, you might not necessarily have to stone all the way up to that point. But if I take this and now I snuggle this into here, so I would probably I don't really want to make it necessarily any wider, so I probably would delete this, and let's see, I'm going to zoom in here. Now, when I talk about sometimes taking parts of letters and putting them in other areas, if we notice this part of the letter A is exactly this part of the letter U, okay? So instead of me manually laying these stones to recreate this, I can come over to this U, take this section, copy and paste it, and do something like that. And yes, it's not perfect, but sometimes it is. So it was close enough to where, so I just take these letters or these circles and just bring them down a little bit, and now I have that part of the letter U. Okay. If we wanted to do the same thing, we could as the A. Sometimes I don't know. I probably would not squeeze one more in there. I think I would leave it like that. The letter T, I probably would do an internal offset on that one. Oops, I keep forgetting. Change the color. Okay, it looks to me like it was, there's no breaks. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to take this and I'm going to stone it. Oops, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's see. So I think this is somewhere like this. Should not have pulled that out there. Okay, so it's not perfect, but we're going to release our stones. And I probably will bring this down a little bit and make it a little bit longer to make it represent a T. Now I think is a little too wide here, so I probably would just come in here and clean these up. So like I said, now that I'm doing all this, I probably could have just manually laid these stones myself and got them in the right spot the first time. But you don't know how things are going to turn out until you try. Okay, so don't think that T was in the right spot because it's not, should have matched up with the Y. Okay, so the T was down a little bit. This is our original. So what I can do here is go in, I'm going to select that, deselect that circle. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit like that. So it was probably more along the lines of that. Okay, so for the Y, I think I'm just going to manually place my stones to get this done. Probably going to move this and work off of this. Probably would do something along that. Now, I usually try to, follow the center, but I know I'm going to want to keep this Y a little on the wider side here too. So if I were to lay these coming down here, they're going to be too close and collide. So I'm going to kind of offset this a little bit. So probably what I'll use as my guide is actually this outer line here of the Y. It kind of gives you something to follow too, so you know you're kind of staying in a straight row. And if you click and hold your circle in the center and try to you can use that as your guide to laying your stones on that line too. Imagine you're a little arrow, touching that line. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here and I'm going to come up to here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way down, because if I have to make any adjustments, it's easier to make them on a curve than following up around here and then maybe ending up with not enough space. So here I'm setting the space. I can always adjust my spacing down here. Out. And see, we've kind of gone outside the perimeter of the Y, and the program would not know to do that. Okay. So I am going to see how the B stones, I'm not going to clean it up because I want to kind of move on to the next letter, but we can get an idea of how things are going to look. So if I take, okay, it did. Okay, so I clicked on that. I'm going to do a fill like this. I want to change my color. So as you can see, it didn't do too bad of a job, okay? So really there's not much cleanup here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Release my stones. Put this up. Put that up. This part gets tricky because a very narrow loop can be difficult to actually make. So sometimes we have to make some modifications. I probably would change this into something along the lines of a straight line versus a loop, because the loop is not going to come out anyways. It would end up being something along this lines. And it just, to me, it just doesn't flow kind of nice. To me, I would rather modify the B and make some slight changes to it. Oops. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to follow, I have to decide whether I'm going to follow the curve coming in from this part or this part. I think I'm going to pick this. To my B here. And I'm probably just going to do something along those lines here. So I might be able to, I thought maybe I could open it up enough to squeeze another stone in, but it doesn't look like it can. So I'm just going to have to modify these and move them around to get them lined up where I want. Okay, so now if I take this word, this is the word, the original word, take this and I go ahead and I delete the lettering behind it. Change it to all one color. As you can see, my cleaned up version looks a lot better than starting with this particular one. Okay, so again, you know, the program did not do this. This was me manually manipulating and cleaning things up, because the program just couldn't do what we wanted it to do. Okay, so this particular design. Now all these next designs, I'm not going to do every single, I'm not going to do the entire wording because it does take time to do. You can expect to spend quite a bit of time cleaning up your designs. It's all part of the process. So I wish I could say that, I can do a design in 5 minutes, or I can do a design in 10 minutes, or, even 30 minutes. Sometimes I'm here, I should have timed to see how long it took me, but I bet you any money just to do that word beauty, it probably would have taken me at least probably 15 minutes to do. And that's, either manually laying the stones or cleaning up, based on if I drew, did a single line in the inside of the lettering. So I would say probably I would put in a good 15 minutes just for that word. And that was just a simple one row of stones. The more stones you add, the more stones you have to work and manipulate. Okay, so it's longer the process is going to take. It's just, the way it is. Now, something like this probably will not take as long because we are working with a flat square letter. Okay, so we're able to use that linear fill, and besides having to do some minor cleanup, we probably that one will take us the least amount of time. Let's see, but this particular one, so I think this is my, so again, I would Control Shift G. I want to ungroup the letters. So I want to stone one letter at a time, okay? And also, by doing this, so if this was a different type of font, and it was more of a Arial style lettering, some of those letters, like an I, an L, you possibly could do and pick a linear fill, and then do a radial fill on some of the other letters that have curves to them. So by breaking and stoning up each letter individually, you can pick the type of rhinestone fill you want to do for that exact letter. You don't have to pick one for the entire word. Okay, so just look at each piece of the word and decide on, in your case, whether you can do a linear fill or a radial fill on that. Okay, so I am going to, I'm only going to stone a few letters here, okay, just to kind of give you an idea. Like I said, I don't want to, have a 3-hour video or anything like that if I can avoid it, but I just wanted to be able to kind of get everything all in here at one time, and then just to kind of show you different ways that I would do things. So I am going to, I'm going to back up here. I am going to, I don't think I made a copy. Nope, I did not. So I took my copy. So I'm going to group this back together. Okay, so now I'm going to pick a radial fill. I'm going to do this one, or I'm sorry, an outline. And I'm going to do an outline for this one too. I don't think the radial fill, no, radial fill is not going to make difference. It would in the B because it's a little bit bigger, so it did actually add. But because we've decided with the letter, the smaller letters, that we want, could only fit two rows of stones, I'm not going to make the B 3 rows of stones, okay? I, um, I like my letters to be consistently the same thickness. Sometimes if I were to make that B like really big, then maybe I would make the thickness of that letter be different. But just because it's an uppercase letter and there's more room to fit a fit more rows of stones, doesn't necessarily mean that I want that look. Okay, so I do not. I'm going to keep this as the same thickness as the lowercase letters. Okay, so now if I come in here and I'm going to select all these and I'm just going to release my stones. Change this to red. And that was my kitty cat. He's telling me it's getting close to being dinner time. Okay, so I'm going to start with the letter E here first. And I'm probably going to ungroup these letters too. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to say send it back. Okay, so now this particular letter I want the second row to come in somewhere in here. So I'm going to just lay these stones like this. I'm going to work towards that curve so that I can make sure I can adjust my spacing if I need to. Let's see. And what I like to do when I do 2 rows in a single row is, so if I did a single row on a line that's like this, I would consider this like a horizontal line. This is your vertical line. This horizontal line, I would also leave 1 row, make it as 1 row of stones. Okay, even though we probably could have made it 2, but because it'll make such a huge difference in making that easier to see, that closing in that gap and making it a lot thicker than it should be, that's not the look I'm going to go for. Okay. Let's see. So my letter A here, oops, that's a T. My letter A here, right click, send it back. And let's just bring this one down here right now. Okay, so it didn't space it nice and evenly for me, so we'll just manually respace them, and that's just what I'm going to have to do. Okay, so I am not going to go out like this. I'm going to change this A. So I'm going to delete all of these stones. I actually might curve this in just a little bit. Do something like that. And then I will select some of these stones. I'm going to copy, paste them over here. I will try to select these 3 stones. Okay, so there's going to be an issue. Okay, so what we need to do here is probably going to just shift these up a little bit. And then I'm going to take this, bring these down just a little bit. And I've created the space for that. Okay, don't think we'll need that to go all the way up there, because this is the part that kind of gets welded into the next letter, so sometimes we don't have to stone all the way up. Okay, so this, I like to, when I come off of like a letter A or a D or something with a P or a B, I like to try to pick a stone, not just kind of start off like that. I'd like to try to get it to blend if I can. Sometimes not always possible, but that's just my particular what I kind of like to do. And sometimes when you do that, it does open up the lettering a little bit more. And I gotta decide whether I want to what am I gonna do at the top of the A? Something like that. So I don't necessarily want to go all the way up here. Probably, I like to try to end where this stone is between 2 stones, and not necessarily like that, if I can. But sometimes you don't always have the ability to do that. I'm going to kind of see. I started up there between 2 stones. See, here I started kind of in the crook of these. So I would have something along the lines of that if I wanted to. Do that, but I do tend to like to follow it through, because it's, as you can see on this curve, it's a little thicker down here. But again, only we know what changes we've made to this letter. Okay, so our letter B here. Click, send to back. Letter B, I am going to delete a bunch of these stones here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this part and I am going to duplicate it to make the straight line for the B. Okay, I know when you look at these letters, they kind of just all blend, and a lot of people will start stoning, you know, down here and try to create that blend. I always look at it as it's just a separation. I like the straight line. I like this to be a straight line, and then my curve comes in off of the straight line, not having this curve go and start following through here. Okay, so that's just how I prefer to do it. I think it makes kind of a cleaner looking letter when you do it that way, than to how it would want to stone it based off of the two pieces merging. Okay, so now we have this thickness here. Okay, so this is where, you know, obviously another row of stones could be put in here, but I don't want to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this outer line, and I'm going to manually move my center line and make it fall within this area here. Okay, and again, I just want certain areas of the B to be thicker, so I'm not going to follow it all the way through. That's my Sammy boy. I have two cats, Sammy and Dylan. And Sammy likes to eat. He doesn't like to miss any of his meal times. Okay, so let's see here. So what I probably will do is I will probably bring this in a tad. I don't necessarily want to stop it. Let's see what I'm going to do here. I don't want a huge gap, okay? You want to kind of maintain still the same amount of gap where this inside line would have been. I have to decide whether I want to bring this all the way down and create a double row, or if I take this single row and try to bring it in a little bit. Okay, so I think, what am I going to do here? I think what I might do is just make a double row like this if I can. Not sure how it's going to look. So I'm not quite loving how it blends. I like my lines to blend. Do something along that lines. funky here. I bring these out a little bit so I can bring this in. Might even actually overlap these just a tad, because that's okay to do. Okay, now I'm gonna kind of look at how far over the thickness was for. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop right about, let's see. And I would do something like that. So now I take these three letters, take these, and I'm going to group them, Control G, Control G, Control G. It's easier to kind of drag things over. Place them on top of here. I'm going to have to ungroup and probably delete these stones here. But see, nestle this in to the right space so I know when I ungroup I just have to delete these two. Actually, I'm going to move it down just a little because I want it to blend in with this circle here. Okay. Oops, Control Shift G. Delete. Okay, so this particular we would have to delete here, but I'm going to just show you something really quick here. So if I took this part of let's see, I did Control Shift G and I ungrouped. I could actually take this part of the A, not that letter, or not that one, and I can actually move it over here and form part of the Y. If I wanted to, I could probably use it on both parts. I'm sorry, the U, not the U. not the Y, I'm sorry, but the U, I could actually, I'm gonna delete this, and I'm gonna delete this one. I take this A, move it over a little bit here. I could take this, delete this. I could delete that. I can move this over. And now just by making the letter A, I've been able to make the letter U. Okay? And then I could take this part of the U and it would be this part of the Y. So I could just modify, put those, take those two off, and then all I would have to do is stone this part of the Y. So see, actually by just making 3 letters, I've already sped up the process and finishing off the rest of the design. You could possibly even, no, the pitch isn't right. But sometimes you can take making an L and a T. If you make a T or an L, you can shift it over and make the other letter. And upside down when we get to, let's see, when we get to another, I'll show you some other shortcuts. But as you can see, just what we've done so far is so much clearer and nicer than just what we started out with, okay? And again, it's, you know, it's not the program that did that, but it was me. I still probably would bring this, I think this B is still, there's too much space here. So I probably would work on this B a little bit more. And I probably would adjust that. Maybe I wouldn't come out as far. Yeah, that's not exactly the exact look that I'm going for here. But again, I would just play with that and move some, you know, probably take this inside row. What I would probably do is take this inside row and actually bring it into a point that I wanted to, and then I probably would redo my outside row. So the beam might not be as wide, at least for maybe just part of it. Okay, you might not have to do the whole thing, but yeah, that wasn't exactly the look that I was going for. Okay, so on to our college or athletic style lettering. Okay, so again, most would say, oh, this stoned pretty good. My eyes are drawn to these spaces between these 4 stones. Okay. I always think if a row of stones start out as a even line, these stones here in this row should be shifted to match the next row over. Okay, we have to remember when these fonts are being created, the designer doesn't care if this is not an exact thickness, a certain thickness to fit this many stones. So the program again is laying the stones on the outer lines and trying to fill in the center. Okay, and if it can't fit one more row of stones in, then it's just going to, it's not going to shift them all to the left, it's just going to shift them farther apart. So again, it's up to us to manually fix that. So what I would do here is I would release the stones. Okay. And I would I want everything to line up. So these stones up here and these stones down here are pretty much, I think that they're equally, they're lined up. So it's the ones in the center that are kind of off. So what we would do here is, no, I'm not quite sure, these ones, well, let's see what happens. So if we take these and we go to up to there, I don't want to include this one. And I'm going to bring up my transform panel and I'm going to line everything to the left. You know what? I'm going to backtrack. I just wanted to make a copy so we can see what before and after. Let's see. I'm trying to drag too many stones here at one time. I think that's what is happening. Should have grouped it. That's the drawback of trying to move an object that has a lot of stones in it. So what you should do is do Control G to group the stones. Maybe it'll work. Okay, there we go. Okay, it's still not letting me. If you do too many functions here, I don't want it to crash on me either. I still can't move this. I wanted to make a copy of it, but it's not allowing me to make a copy of it. I wanted to compare the two versions. Let's try duplicate. It's not letting me duplicate either. I think I got too many things going. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. So duplicate. Okay, now I'm going to Shift Control G and ungroup. I just want you to see what it looks like after we spend a little time cleaning it up. Okay, so we're going to select this row of stones here, and we're going to align them to the left. Oh, so I see. Now we have multiple copies here. That's what it's doing. That's why I was having so many issues. Let's see here. We got lots going on here. So let me see. Let's try deleting this copy. And let's see if we can work with this. And let's duplicate, whoops. Duplicate. This is the part that really kind of gets me with this program, is it does have its lagging. Ungroup. Hopefully we don't have more than one layer. Oh, we do. Oh boy. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to do this something. It's made too many copies. So I'm just going to start fresh. We're just gonna stone. Let's put some space between this. Okay, back to normal here. So do duplicate, and I'm gonna bring this down. Okay. Now we're back in business. Okay, so now I'm going to, don't know what this blue line is. Weird. Blue line. I don't know what the blue line is. And it's a line to the left. Nope. Oh, I know what. I had to release the rhinestones. That's what it was. Oh, sorry about this. I'm not used to designing in this program, so believe me, I am still learning a lot myself. I want to do functions that I can do in my other program, and I just, I do it a little bit different, so I'm just trying to teach myself how to use this program too. Okay. See, now these, I think it made these stones a little too close. I wonder if it's because, I bet you because this row, yep, needs to be shifted over too. So let's do this. Now this is going to get tricky here because they're so off-centered. So we have to do something like that. And make it left. And click this one, make it left. Okay. Okay, so now we have 5 rows thick going horizontally, and we have 5 rows vertically. Okay, so most people, you could either take this and shift it over, but what I'm going to do is I want these rows to line up with these, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to click line to the left, and I'm just going to shift these all over. Okay, so now if we look at this F, our eyes are not drawn to anything because it is all equally the same thickness. Okay, so if you compare it to that one. Okay, so the wonderful thing about, again, we can use parts of letters to redo others. So we could either sit here and fix this H, or parts of the letter F can be turned into the letter H. And I'm going to show you how I do that. Actually, okay. Okay, so the letter H, it goes, the horizontal parts on top and bottom go 1 stone beyond the vertical part of the design. Okay, so I'm going to delete these. Oops, I'm just going to delete these 2 rows. I'm going to do that. Okay, so now what we can do is now we can take this part and we can go to our replicate panel, and we can flip that and create a duplicate copy. Okay, so our duplicate copy, I'm going to turn and make it another color. Okay, so now we need to put our letter H together. I think this particular letter H, there's just the spacing is just way too thin in here. Okay, so by us redoing and making our own H, we can widen that H up a little bit. Okay, as long as you have obviously the room on your shirt or in your design to add that. So we're going to take this part, and I'm going to group just the yellow stones. And I am going to lay them on top of, okay, so this is probably how it was. Actually, it might not have been that way. Let's see. So if we want to create a space, that's too tight. So if we want to create one stone space in between, I'm going to match up and place those yellow stones right on top of the black ones, okay? If we zoom in here a little bit, okay, so now we do have stones overlapping. So our black stones are still ungrouped. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go through and I'm going to delete the overlapping stones, which should be to that point. Okay, so now these two are overlapping also. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to delete those. And then when we turn this to black and we hit Shift Control G, now we've remade our letter H. And all of the circles are evenly spaced. I think this letter F, let's see, something's not right with this letter F. This doesn't look balanced. I think this is supposed to be like that, and I think there's supposed to be another row that comes down here. For some reason it just didn't stone that way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab these 5 stones and I'm going to line them up with that row. To me that looks better. Okay, so we have an F and we have our letter H. Okay, so the letter S, oops. Yeah, see, we can tell it's kind of, actually these are supposed to stick out too. This is just a straight line. And this comes in a little bit, so we could actually delete and create something like that for the F. Okay, so our letter S. So believe it or not, a letter S also, we can modify half of the letter S. Let's see here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to respace and bring these stones over to fix this part of the design here. So I am going to the right, these ones I'm going to bring over to this left side. Oops. Okay, I think I'm going to delete that. Now, I am going to show you. We can take half of this letter S. I'm splitting it basically. Let me see how many circles we have in a row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. Actually it works, I think it works better when there is an odd amount. Sometimes you can take an S, half of it, duplicate it, and if I, let's see, and I mirror it down, and I horizontally flip it, you can make another S, but I think it's only going to work if the stone count is even. So then what I can do is overlap. Okay. What I can do is overlap these stones. Just Control G, group them. I want to see Control G on this one too. I want to see what height of my design is here. Let's see. Line it to the top. And I'm going to line this bottom piece to the bottom of this. Okay, so what I have here is so I can do that. Control Shift G to ungroup. So I can delete my overlapping stones that were there. I can actually Control Shift G, ungroup these. Delete that. Oops. Oh, sorry. Oh, what am I doing here? Undo. Wanted to realign these here. Okay. So now what I've done is, so if you take top part of an S and you kind of split it in half and you vertically flip it and then horizontally flip it, this part of the S and this bottom part of the S are actually the same piece. So that's what I actually did. And then where they came together was a row of stones that overlapped right here. And then what I just did is I kind of respaced these stones out here. So I only had to fix the stones over here. Actually, this needs to be. And I have been able to recreate my letter S by just doing half. Okay, so yeah, so that's what I did for the S. I know it looked probably a little confusing, but I can maybe, do another video later on this process too. But here we have our 3 letters. That we have made, or I've cleaned up, and now you can kind of tell how much nicer they look than the original. Okay, so a lot of people may say that this looks fine, but actually after you take the time to do that cleanup, you see how much nicer it can actually look. And if you wanted to have this as a 2-color, all you would have to do is, you could select the outside circles and just start changing them to another color, and then you can, make it a 2-color font if that's what you wanted to do also. Take some time. I usually try to, grab as many as I can, change them, and then you kind of just go in and, if you have to individually select as you get on the insides of letters. So one other way I'm going to show you before we move on to the next font, how I would make this letter also. I do this a lot with my college and athletic type lettering because I want my circles to come out looking like this, okay? And we can create our own linear rows of stones. So what I would do is I would drop a circle, right click, convert to path, change it to 0.13 inches, and I'm going to make it black. Place it here. Go. I'm going to bring up the advanced replicate, which is the second option here. Go to the bent arrow to the far right. In the X and Y offset, we are going to create rows of stones. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate going up first vertically. So in order to do that, If I want to go up, I'm going to type in a positive number in my offset. I'm going to type in 0.155, which is my stone size, 0.13, plus my spacing, which is 0.025. That's how I get 0.155. And I'm just going to start hitting the replicate. Oops, that goes down. I want to go up. Sorry about that. I have to type in a negative number to go up. So I'm going to just click in front of the 0, and I'm going to put in a negative sign, and I'm going to select replicate. So I'm going to go all the way up. Okay. Now I'm going to select this whole row, and I want to go to the right. So to do that, I have to put in zeros here, and I need to change this to a positive 0.155, and I'm going to replicate going across. Oops. And it just keeps on going. It's kind of a delayed. I didn't need that many. Okay, so you say, well, why'd you create a box? Because what I can now go in and do is just go in and delete stones, okay? So this is just a simple process. So in that quick, short, less than a minute, I was able to create the letter F by just using my replicate and deleting circles. Okay, I would do that for all of these. I would create a box, and then where you see the, your negative space, just go in and delete. This allows you also to, be specific. Now see, I was able to fit 6 rows of stones, and then I did 5 here. So I was able to get it a little bit thicker by doing it manually than what the program did. The program only put 5 because they spaced them so far out. Okay, so I would have had to have gone in here and added a row to create that extra thickness. This I was just able to, quickly do it. So that's another way to do it, because basically, this process is a linear process. So we just created linear horizontal and vertical rows. We did exactly what this rhinestone function did, except for it was controlled. We wanted the stones or the circles to be a specific measurement in between each one. So my rows are perfectly 0.025 between each stone, vertical and horizontal. And here we don't know what we're getting because it's just filling in the space. Okay, it's trying to work around this number, but it might not be exact. And that's why we were able to get that extra row in there. Okay, so on to our last font. And I am going to, let's see here. Okay, so we have the word beauty here. Let's see, I'm going to just take off some of these right now. I probably will be bringing them back, but okay. So this is what we have. So I definitely do not want to work. Let's see, I'm going to do Shift Control G to ungroup my letters for one thing. So I'm going to create a tad bit more spacing. Okay, so again, I am not a fan of the linear fill. I know this was the best looking kind of fill, but I don't want to have to recreate the arches for all this lettering. So even though I know the radial fill is not going to turn out that great, that's probably what I'm going to start with. And I'm just going to skip to the smaller letters just so we can kind of wrap this up here. I'm going to copy this. Okay, so that looks horrible. That looks horrible. So what we are going to have to do here is do a lot of cleanup here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I am going to pick the easiest letter, which is going to be the letter U. Okay, so I am going to delete everything. Oops, I need to release my rhinestones. And I am going to delete these. I'm going to respace these. They don't look even. Okay, they weren't even spaced evenly. I'm just going to put them to the right, make sure I got a straight row. Okay, I'm going to create my own with the replicate. This one, I want to go to the left, so that means I am going to type in a negative 0.155. We are going to try to fit in 4 rows here and see what we can do. It's going to end up making the lettering wider than it should. Okay, so I'm going to take this part, delete it. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to bring it over here. I'm going to try to line it up. I want to create enough space so we can make sure that that looks like a U. Come in here. Okay, so then what I would do here is I would bring this one down. I'm going to bring this one down. And I'm going to bring this and this down to create this part of the Y. This one I probably could squeeze one more in because this is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take and I'm going to respace those. in, grab that one, respace it, and then I'm going to respace this row. And now I have created the U, which I did not make a copy of before just to see how it looks, so I will do that with the E and the A. But the U, for those of you that might not think about this, if you have a U and you want to vertically flip it, and if you horizontally flip it, now you have the letter N. Okay, so from a U you can make an N. From an N you could take these rows and duplicate, replicate, and make an H. So with one letter we've made 3 letters. Okay, and actually when I look at this part of the U, I could select these, move them over, and I could probably make that T, add another stone, another row or 2 of stones to make this, and then grab these stones, duplicate, make them come out this side, and 1 row out this side. If I wanted to, I could flatten this. These, and I will respace them, and I could either replicate or just grab it and do it manually too. And I could grab these 3 stones, and I could do that, and now I have the letter T. Okay, so by just doing 1 letter, you can get other letters from that. So that's why it's so nice to break your designs down, and it's time saving. And that's how I've developed creating alphabets, off of creating 1 letter sometimes, and being able to take that letter, break it down. Just using this part, the straight line from the U, it's an I. You add a couple more rows of stones, it's now an L. You take, let's see, what else could you use that for? You could actually take this row over here, duplicate it, add a couple more rows of stones, and that's the straight line for the B. So now all you have to do is make this part, or clean up this part, okay? Let's see what we can do with the letter E. Problem is going to be the spacing. So I am going to release the rhinestones for that. Oops. Did I release them? No, they're not. There we go. So I think I'm going to delete that one. And I'm going to make see how many stones I could fit across. So if I did 4 here, 4 here, so this would be my space in the center here. So it could possibly work, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this over just a tad. Space them out like that. to keep a decent spacing. I don't want these spaced far apart because why isn't it allowing me to click on that? Oh, it is. Okay. It's just because it's black, it's not showing. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I would do something like this. Now we can't go 4 rows for the thickness. We're going to probably do probably 2 rows like we did for the U. So you're going to have something along the lines of where they merge in a little bit here. You create something like that. Oh, there's 3 rows. Hold on a minute. I gotta merge the 4th row in. So our stones are getting a little tight here. You might be able to have to put this in as a 3 rows instead of 2. Do 2 rows like that, or 3 rows like that. See, I have to create a big enough gap, okay, just so that doesn't look so closed in, and it makes it easier to read. Okay, so I'm going to merge it into this line here. So I'm going to probably take these, shift them up a little bit. I can either take, let's see, since these are sort of straight. Oops. Okay, so it's going to be tight again here. I really want this one to come down here. Okay, now I have to do some adjusting. This is where it gets tricky. Just trying to make everything fit in the puzzle. So either I do something like that and you've got this big spacing here, or you try to do this and you've got real tight spacing. So you gotta kind of pick and choose. Move that up just a little bit. I don't want to close this in too much either, so I'm trying to wanted these to kind of like be lined up too. Spacing is, it's going to be tight, but like I said, and if you have to do it here and there, it's okay. Yes, you might have a little template tearing, but that template material is a little forgiving too, so as long as hunks don't, you know, come off, you can sometimes, when you lay it down, you can, you know, take your fingernail and connect those, the little piece that kind of is maybe like a hanging chad kind of thing, and put it back. So I'm going to do this. Okay, so the E, I definitely do not want to do 3 rows because it's going to only leave this little section up here. If I took these 3 and I moved them over here, let's see how this looks. Because it might all depend really on what color shirt you put it on too, you know. See, that kind of see, we only have that tiny little space there, but you change this to a lighter color shirt, you know, it makes it more difficult to see that area. It kind of blends in with all the other stones. So your black is a better option, but we could also, if we deleted that, we could also have an E like that, and that, to me, that kind of opens things up. Okay, so the last letter I'm going to do is the letter A here real quick. So these 2 rows I think I'm going to keep. To delete. Actually, I think I'm going to delete this row. It's too close to this. So I'm going to delete this. Move that up. I need to try to get in one more stone here. So I might have to move that down to like that. Kind of shift these back around. Just make some minor adjustments. Go enough to where you're just barely bumping it a little bit, and then it's not as noticeable. Then if you just made adjustments between, say, 2 or 3 or even less than 5 stones. So this one is okay, so this one's going to be a little bit more. What I may do here. I might have to put a little bit more spacing between the stones here. Create a bit of an offset. Okay. And what I probably will do is bump this one up. Grab all these and just respace them. I love it when I can respace in a straight line. Makes it easier to make those slight modifications. A little tight in here, but the only thing we could do is delete this one, and then I could respace all these two. I could do something like that. So I appreciate anybody that's kind of stuck around with me this far. You will notice that now that we're getting into more tips that are, actual design related. If I'm showing examples of, stoning a actual design, or, stoning letters, that kind of thing, these particular videos are going to be a little bit more lengthy. Just because you can see, I want you to see that this is not, this is the process. Yes, I'm doing some stuff in between that, is adding a little bit more time onto the process. But, even if I wasn't, just some of these tweaks are time consuming. And it's all right. This is all a part of the process. I just get so many people that say to me, oh, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. You watched a video on YouTube of how to stone a fairly easy object that's going to stone well. I mean, I did one myself. On tip number 3, I picked a heart. I knew it was going to fill fairly well. It was going to not have a whole lot of cleanup. I mean, it's still, one of them did have a, still a good amount of cleanup to do. Um, but the more intricate your designs are, the longer it's going to take to figure things out. And there's a lot of trial and error, as you can tell. I will keep adjusting stones if I have to. Sometimes I'll go back to the same stone 3 or 4 times and move it around if that's what has to be done in order to, create that spacing or get that look that I'm going for. Um, do we want to spend 3 hours on a design? No. But if that's what it takes to get it to look like a quality design, then that's what we have to do. Just a part of the process. There's no program, and I own a lot of different programs at all different price points. I've got CorelDRAW, I've got the macro that is supposed to be so amazing, and quite frankly, it doesn't do any better of a job than the Silhouette program as far as what you're starting off with. Now it does have where you can respace on a curve, so I do like that about it, but I find that if I do too much respacing in CorelDRAW, it crashes. So that means I lose part of what I've been working on. And that's no fun either. So nothing worse than putting in the time and you're sitting there making all these corrections, then all of a sudden the program locks up on you. So I find that program with CorelDRAW, and I have a gaming computer, so I have enough RAM and I have enough space, and I have a high processor, but still crashes. So, but yeah, I have almost every rhinestone program there is at all different price points, and they all will give the same results to start off with. There's no magical program that is a push of a button and there you get these perfect designs. It just does not exist. Hopefully it will one day, but I highly doubt it, just because there's so many imperfections when these objects that we're stoning, when you're going from thin to thick areas, and that's the problem. The computer just doesn't understand, and it's just trying to do the best that it can, but it's not made to say, oh, okay, let's adjust the spacing over here so we can perfectly lay this amount of stones over here, but now the space opens up, so now we can adjust it and lay more. It's not made to do that. So that's where the flaw is, and the flaw is in almost every single program. Okay, so this is what we started with, and this is how I cleaned up the design, or the letters. So as you can tell, by moving them around and adjusting my own spacing, I was able to probably would delete that one. I was able to create and clean those up. Okay, so looking back at all these different types of fonts, and as you can see, the process for each one was different. And that's when I talk about there's no one class that's going to teach you how to do everything. And this is what I mean. You have to learn to kind of visually break down your designs piece by piece and focus on that particular piece and say, how am I going to handle this piece? And then if you can, find a way to take part of that piece and move it over and do it and fit it into another part of the design, that's bonus. That's that much less time that you're going to spend cleaning up that particular area, if it's possible. So I love, like I said, I love being able to take letters, and not so much, it doesn't always work out with script letters. Like I said, you with script letters, don't necessarily look at the whole letter, look at lines. And because, this particular one, this A had the same lines as the U. So that's why I was able to take that line and just copy, paste it, put it over there, add these stones, and voila, I have a U. So, like I said, I don't know how long this video is. I'm sure it's on the lengthy side, so hopefully, nobody's falling asleep. But you can expect when I start doing these types of videos, you can expect them to be a little bit on the lengthy side. So, I apologize, but it is what it is. So, if you like it, I hope you give it a thumbs up. And I hope you hit the subscribe button so that you can see future tip videos that I'm going to make. And hopefully we can all learn together. So thanks for watching.